What if God either has to exist or couldn't possibly exist? No middle ground. Philosopher Norman Malcolm thought that's exactly how it works. If you accept his logic, then denying God's existence might be harder than you think. Malcolm's whole argument turns on one idea. If God's existence isn't impossible, then he must exist necessarily. To explain, Malcolm goes back to St. Anselm's Proslogion, where he says Anselm gives not one but two different arguments. The first is the classic version we all know and love. God is that than which a greater cannot be conceived. Existing is greater than not existing, so God exists. But Malcolm, like Kant, rejects this. He says it's flawed because existence by itself isn't a real predicate. It doesn't add anything to the concept of a thing. But then comes the second argument. Anselm says that God is a necessary being, a being that cannot not exist. Necessary existence is greater than mere existence, therefore God exists. And this, says Malcolm, is the version that actually works. Why? Because while existence isn't a real predicate, necessary existence is. So what is necessary existence? Well, think about dependence. Everything around us, planets, people, penguins, is contingent. That means it depends on something else to exist. You, for example, depended on your parents, and now you depend on food, oxygen, and not being hit by a meteorite. But God, by definition, wouldn't depend on anything. Unlike us, he never had parents, he doesn't need food, and wouldn't be affected by a meteorite. God isn't a contingent being, but a necessary being, completely self-sufficient and timeless, with no beginning or end. Now, here's the move Malcolm thinks actually works. He argues that God's existence is either impossible or necessary. No middle ground. Why? Imagine God doesn't exist. That means he never existed, and he never will, because by definition he is not a being that has a beginning. So if he doesn't exist, then his existence is impossible. But if he does exist, then he exists necessarily, not just as a matter of fact, but as a matter of logical necessity, since he cannot begin nor cease to exist. So Malcolm sets up a fork in the road. Either God's existence is impossible, or he must necessarily exist. So, which is it? How do you escape this argument? If you want to argue that God doesn't exist, you'd have to prove that the concept of God is logically impossible. But that's not an easy thing to do. We could go down the route of questioning the coherence of God's attributes. Take omnipotence. God is all-powerful, he can do anything, right? But can he create a rock that is too heavy for him to lift? If he can't, he's not omnipotent, and if he can, and he can't lift it, well, he's still not omnipotent. Theologians typically respond that omnipotence doesn't include the logically impossible. God can't create a square circle or four-sided triangles, but that doesn't undermine omnipotence. So that road isn't going to be as easy as it first seems. Malcolm's position is that there is no contradiction in the concept of God. Mind you, he doesn't argue for it, just assumes it. And so his ontological argument can be seen as a conditional. If the concept of God is logically coherent, then his existence isn't impossible, and therefore he exists necessarily. Nonetheless, that's a big if, and proving it, that's a real challenge. But hang on, even if God's existence isn't impossible, does that really mean he has to exist? Malcolm thinks so, but he hasn't shown how we get from possibility to actuality. Luckily for Malcolm, there's another kind of argument that tries to do exactly that. It's called a modal ontological argument, and that's what we'll explore in the next video.